the second video of this series. So in the last video we saw how to install Keptn and we saw how to access the Keptn breeze. So in this video what we'll do is we'll try to create a new project in Keptn, and we'll see what all things are required to set up a new project in Keptn, and then we'll do a lot of installations, configurations, and then we'll have a sample Jmeter script, and then we'll execute from Keptn, and we'll see how everything is tied together. So Keptn needs a Git repo. It can be GitLab, GitHub, Bitbucket. So what we have to do is we have to get started by creating a new repo. So here I'm in GitHub, and I'm going to create a new repo here, and I'll just name it demo Keptn. You can keep it public or private. So for now, what you have to do is you have to make sure that you are initializing by adding a readme file. This step is important, otherwise it will not work. So after you have selected this option, you can go ahead and click on create repo. So the repo is created now, and then we have to go back to our virtual machine, and then we'll use the Keptn CLI to create a project. Now to create the project, some of the I'll just store my keep my this is the Git repo link, and to create the project. Okay, so before creating the project, what I have to do is I have to create a YAML file. So this is a sample YAML file. It's called the cpad YAML file. So we need that cpad YAML file basically to create the project. Now what I'll do is I'll take that YAML file and I'll go to my terminal, and there let me create a sample cpad YAML file. So I'll just give some ideas what is this cpad YAML file. So what is the cpad YAML file is, using this file we will create a project, and this is the first thing that is required before you can create any project in Keptn. And there are a few things that I would like to share. For example, okay, so this you see we have stages and we have a stage name. So whatever stage name you provide here, it's going to create a new branch. If you have I have a single stage name here, load test. If you have another stage name called UAT, you have some regression testing, you have something called deployment, then each with that stage name it's going to create all those new branches in your GitHub repo. And then coming back to the sequence is basically whatever you trigger, you will see a drop down in your Keptn breach, and you will see these exact names in those drop downs, and when you select that drop down and trigger that activity, then whatever task you have defined under that sequence, those tasks will be executed. And how these tasks will be executed, there is a separate YAML file which I'll come to that later, but just for now, just understand what is the meaning of this stage name and the sequence name and the task name. So in this particular example I have three sequences. One is execution, one is evaluation, and one is execution and evaluation. So under execution I'm only doing test, under evaluation I'm only doing the evaluation task, under execution and evaluation I'm doing both execution means test and evaluation task. So what I'll do is I'll just save this file, and now we can use this file and create the project in Keptn. Before we do that, what we have to do is we have to create a developer token in your GitHub account, and we'll use that your user ID and your token to create the project. So to create the project, the command is Keptn create project. I'll just copy this whole command and then I'll change the values. My project name, your project name in Keptn frontend, can be different than the project name that you are having in GitHub. For simplicity, I'll keep both the names same, demo Keptn, and my file name is cpad.yaml. Cpad.yaml, and this is my repo URL. Yeah. So my command to create the Keptn project is ready. Let's go ahead and execute this command. It was not accepting this particular name. I don't know why. So after I converted that to all lowercase without hyphen, the project, as you can see, got created here. And now let's go back to the Keptn front end and see whether the project really got created or not. So we'll just refresh the screen here. Okay, so now we see that our project demo Keptn has been created. Go back to our GitHub repo, and we can see whether the new branch, so you can see there is another new branch which has been created, and it has the same name as the stage name. So currently these are the default files, but to actually execute the Jmeter load test, we have to do some other work. So let's go ahead and do the remaining steps. So the first thing what we have to do after project creation is we have to install something called job executor service. So what is a job executor service? So in Keptn's term, a job executor service, or JES, is basically responsible to perform all the tasks that you defined in your YAML file. It's not the CPAD YAML file, but another YAML file that we'll discuss now. For example, that YAML file is called the job config YAML file. So inside that YAML file, we need to define the path of your Jmeter script. We need to, the same way we are running Jmeter in the CLI, we need to pass the similar arguments in that YAML file, and we need to define how much CPU, how much memory your pod needs to use. So all those details will go into that particular job config YAML file. So what the job executor service does is basically the after we install the job executor service or JES, it will always keep running as a pod, and when you trigger a test, that JES will dynamically create another temporary pod that basically downloads your Jmeter image as per the instructions that you have given in that new job config YAML file, and then it performs the load test. Once the required tasks have been completed, that pod is again deleted. It changes status from running to completed, and after some time it gets removed from the from your namespace. So that is what the JES is. So now let's go ahead and install the JES. So to install the JES, what we have to do is there are a few variables that we need to define. So this is the API token. Let's go ahead and run this command. My host is here. Okay, so this task description, basically the format is, let me show you the format. So what is this task description? So what this job, this JES that we are going to install, so basically that service is going to listen to this particular topic, and this name over here, test, this needs to match with the task name that we have defined in the YAML file. If you remember, ls minus lrt pad YAML. So you see, we have defined a task called test. We have also another task, but we can always, after we create the first task, we can always go and edit the remaining topics that the particular JES has subscribed to. So to get started, what we'll do is we'll just make sure that the new JES that we are installing, it is subscribing to this particular topic. So to do that, we'll define this variable with this name. And next thing is the latest JES version as of now is 0.3.0 that we are going to use, and we can also use different namespace where the job executor service will be installed. So everything is done. Now let's install our job executor service. So JES has been installed. Let's check the status. Alias k equal to q. So you see, a new pod has been created called job executor service, and it's in running status. Now if we go back to Keptn, then we can see, go to settings and go to integrations, and in integration you can see that there is a new, let me minimize it. So this job executor service is, that is what we just installed, and if you see all the subscription it is subscribes to, you will see there is a, this one is the one that we just added during installation. You can delete it, you can add new subscriptions, those are things that we can do. So for now our JES has been installed. The next thing would be to create the job config YAML. Project creation step 2, I did this as a step 1, so this step is already completed. Now next thing would be to create a service. So basically when you create a service, you can create the service from the front end. So a service is basically required for your for all the tasks which will be done by that particular service. So in this case, let's go ahead and create a service. Create service Jmeter. So the service is now created. Now if you go back to your repo, you see a directory called Jmeter has been created. Now all our repo related items, the Jmeter script, the test data, everything we can keep inside this Jmeter directory, which is basically nothing but the service name that we just created. After installing JES, we have to create a job config YAML file. The path of that YAML file is inside your branch, the stage name, and then your service name, and inside that we need to go and just create a new file, and we have to specify another path name job, and inside that we have to do config.yaml. So I'll just go ahead and paste this sample file. So I'll explain few things about this file. So the event that this particular YAML file will listen to is this one, test triggered. This matches with the job executor service topic that we configured during the JES installation. You can also see that here. If you go to integrations, so you see sh Keptn event test triggered. So So the same name we have to provide in the YAML file. And now coming to task. So when we execute the test in Keptn, then it's going to the job executor services is going to look for this file in this path, and whatever task we have defined here, it is going to execute those tasks. So I just gave a name, and then these are the CPUs and memory, my temporary pod that is responsible to execute the test. It will use that much, so I will reduce that to a lesser value. So the max poll duration, you can keep it a higher value. What it means is, once you start the test in Keptn front end, it tries to check the result of your task after that time. And if the job has not completed, then the job basically fails, and we do not want to see errors because of that one. So what you can do is, if your test execution period is 30 minutes, 1 hour or 2 hour, you can always give this value to a higher value greater than the execution period, so that it doesn't time out. And then next, this bit is important. So what it says is, okay, what all folders or files that we want to mount. For example, we would like to send some test data files, the Jmeter JMX files, or some custom libraries or plugins that we want our Jmeter to use. So what we can do is, we can always mount those folders that will be used by the pod which runs the Jmeter test. I'll come to so the path of this folder is basically inside the service name. We need to create these folders, and then we will put those files there. So and how these files are mapped to the pod that runs Jmeter test. All these files, whatever we specify here, it is copied to inside Keptn directory. So Keptn and then Jmeter. So another folder called Jmeter plugin, so it will be Keptn and then Jmeter plugins. So we can access all those files with the same name, but with a prefix of /Keptn. So in this case, we are using a Docker image from just before. You can find in GitHub more details about this particular Jmeter image. So I'm using the latest one, 5.5, and these arguments should be very familiar, the CLI commands that we are using. So I have a sample script, blazedemo.jmx, and these are the parameters that I'm passing, and these are the standard ones we need to keep to make sure that we see the logs in the Keptn front end. And then if you have custom plugins that your Jmeter script uses, so assuming that you have all the jar files inside the plugin folder, you can give the class path here. And then these two things I'll come to later. We'll need this for Prometheus. Basically, we need these values so that our Jmeter can send the results to Prometheus. And this is the logging log label. So we want log label info. If you want to see debug, you can change this to debug, and so that you will see more details in your log. And then finally, there is another variable called TTL seconds after finished. So what this decides is, when your test is finished, the temporary pod will remain in completed status. If we give this to 2 hours, 5 hours, for example, you want to analyze the logs, let's say next day, so you would like that pod to remain for 24 hours. So you can give this a longer period. Once that period is completed, that pod which is in completed status, that will be deleted. So this is about the config YAML. So I'll just save this file, and then we'll do a sample test. So the config YAML has been created. Now let's go ahead and put the required files. We have to make sure that whatever paths we provided in the YAML file, as you can see here, we have mapped two folders called Jmeter, and one is Jmeter plugins. We want to make sure that our JMX files, test data files, everything is here, and any plugins, jars, and everything is here. Let's go ahead and create those folders. I have already created those folders. So those folders need to be inside the service name. So this is our service name Jmeter, and here is the folder, and I have already uploaded a sample script, and the other one is Jmeter plugins. So this is the Prometheus plugin that I have uploaded. I'll not be using it for now. That will be in the next video, but I'm just saying how the folder mapping or mounting works. So we have the required files. If you have a test data file, CSV files, you can keep here, and then in the config YAML, just make sure that whatever path you have used, just put /Keptn as the prefix, and then the remaining path is the same as your repo path. So for example, in Jmeter you have another path called test data. Then you can specify, instead of this file name, you can specify test data /xyz.csv. So that is how it works. So after Keptn, the path name is exactly same as the repo path. So in this particular case, because our JMX file resides under Jmeter folder, so that is why we have given path like this, and we have a plugin that we want our Jmeter test to use. So this is the plugin path, Keptn and the Jmeter plugins. Inside that, whatever files, jar files we have, it will use everything. So that is how the config YAML works, and we have already set up the required folder paths, the JMX files, plugin files, config YAML, everything is ready so far, and I think we should be good to start the execution. So this is only Jmeter test execution from Keptn, and it will not do anything relating Prometheus because that's a separate session. So now let's go ahead and let's go to Keptn, and what we'll do is go to sequences, and here we'll create a new sequence, trigger a new sequence. So service, we had named our service as Jmeter, and then stage was load test. Let's go ahead, click execution, and next, trigger. So let's go back to the terminal and let's see alias k q cattle k get ports -a, and you see there is another temporary pod that just got created right now. Let's check the logs. -n js Keptn. So as you saw, there was an error with our pod, the job executor service pod, which was showing status OOM killed. So that means out of memory killed. So after I checked the logs, so it showed me that it was trying to request a memory which was above the limit described in the YAML file. So in the YAML file I have given, as you can see here, I have given the memory limit of 1 GB, but it was trying to request more than 1 GB, so that's why the pod was showing error out of memory. So so after looking at the code, so what I found is the Jmeter image that I'm using. So this is the GitHub repo here, just before, and Docker Jmeter. So in that, if you see the entry point.sh, so what is happening is this Docker container is built for host. I mean, where you are trying to run it on a bare metal, but if you're trying to run it on Kubernetes, then that is where the problem are coming. So they are using free memory calculation using this method, but this method will not work if it is a Kubernetes pod. So that's why we have to clone this repo and change this free memory calculation logic, and then we have to build a custom image. And what I did is, let me show what I did. So I just cloned that repo, and after cloning it, okay, so So I commented out that line, and what I did is this is the command that will show the memory limit allocated to your pod. So what I'm doing is I'm dividing that by this number to get the MB. Only this value will show the value in bytes, and then I'm converting that to KB and then megabyte, and then the rest of the logic is same. And then what I did is I created a I built a new image. So these are all the files. After I downloaded, I cloned the repo and I built a custom image. Then I post that image to my personal repo over here. So that's the change you need to do if you have issues related to the out of memory error. And once you publish the new image, what you can do is you can again go back to the config.yaml, and previously I had used the other repo just before Jmeter 5.5, which is, and then I changed that to my personal repo, the one that has the updated logic for the free memory calculation. So after doing that, start a new execution. Execution has started. Let's go to a console and check the logs. So you see we have a new pod here. We can check the logs. So as you can see here, the execution has already started. And when the execution is completed, we can check the logs here also. So the test I think I gave to run for 5 minutes, 300 seconds. So I'll just let the test complete and then we can come back here and check the status. So test has just completed. Let's go back to Keptn Bridge and see. So you see these are the logs from the Jmeter test started, finished successfully. Yeah, so I think that's how you execute test in Jmeter. And in the next video what we'll do is we'll try to so do the setup for evaluation phase, and we'll see how Keptn can fetch metrics from Prometheus and automatically validate whether the load test has passed or failed.